Gene Hackman was one of Hollywood's greatest actors. He won Oscars, starred in classics, and seemed to have it all. But in 2022, when the legendary actor finally decided to sell his sprawling Santa Fe mansion, movers and real estate agents discovered something extraordinary hidden behind the walls. What they found wasn't just valuable, it revealed a completely different side of Gene Hackman that almost nobody knew existed. And it changed how people understood the man behind the performances. Gene Hackman wasn't like other movie stars. While actors like Jack Nicholson threw legendary parties and Brad Pitt showed up at every red carpet event, Hackman did something radical. He disappeared. By the 1990s, he had already won an Academy Award for The French Connection. He'd starred in Unforgiven, The Poseidon Adventure, and Superman. He was nominated for Oscars multiple times. He could have owned Hollywood. Instead, he chose to own something else entirely, his privacy. In 1989, Hackman moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico. Not Los Angeles. Not New York. Santa Fe. It's a place where celebrities go to vanish. The high desert, the art scene, the anonymity. He bought a sprawling compound on several acres. It was the kind of property where you could live an entire secret life and nobody would know. For over 30 years, Gene Hackman lived there quietly. He raised his family. He gave fewer interviews. He stopped chasing roles. Friends said he seemed happier than he'd ever been. But here's what most people didn't know: behind closed doors, he was living a completely different kind of life. Not the life of an actor. Something else entirely. The mansion had multiple buildings, art studios, workshop spaces, and hidden rooms. It wasn't built like a celebrity home. It was built like a creative sanctuary. Like someone had designed it specifically to keep the world out and something precious locked inside. Neighbors rarely saw him. When they did, he was just an older man in jeans and a hat. No bodyguards. No entourage. No performance. Just Gene. But what happened when the movers arrived in 2022 would prove that this wasn't just a home. It was a museum of obsession. Yet nobody was prepared for what they would actually find. When Gene Hackman decided to sell the Santa Fe property at age 92, he wasn't leaving because he wanted to. His health was declining. It was time to let go. But letting go meant opening the doors to people who had never been allowed inside before. The real estate team arrived expecting a typical celebrity home. Nice furniture. Expensive art. Maybe some movie memorabilia on the walls. What they found instead made them stop in their tracks. The mansion wasn't decorated like a Hollywood star's home. It looked more like a craftsman's workshop that had evolved over 3 decades. Every room told a story. Every space had a purpose. And almost nothing was about acting. In the main house, there were books everywhere. Not coffee table books. Real books. Thousands of them. History, philosophy, architecture, art theory, woodworking, sailing, geography. The library alone could have belonged to a university professor. Hackman had spent decades reading about topics most actors never even think about. But the books were just the beginning. Outside the main house, there were separate studios. Artist studios. Workshop spaces with tools that had been used and worn smooth by hands. These weren't decorative. These were working spaces. Someone had spent serious time here creating things. Making things. Building things. The walls throughout the property displayed artwork. Paintings. Sculptures. Photographs. Some were clearly professional pieces, but many looked personal. Like experiments. Like a journey of artistic discovery that had been happening in complete silence, away from cameras and critics and the expectations of Hollywood. In one building, investigators found detailed architectural drawings. Sketches of buildings. Plans for renovations. Designs for furniture. Technical drawings that showed real knowledge and obsessive attention to detail. Not the work of someone dabbling in a hobby. The work of someone who had dedicated serious time to mastering a craft. The more the team explored, the more they realized something profound. Gene Hackman hadn't retired from acting because he was tired of performing. He'd left Hollywood because he'd discovered something he loved more. But the real shock was still hidden deeper inside the property. Deep within the compound, in one of the back studios, the Discovery team found something that stopped them cold. Woodworking. Serious, masterful woodworking. The workshop was immaculate but lived in. Workbenches lined the walls, covered with tools that showed years of use. Not decorative tools. Real woodworking equipment. Chisels sharpened to razor edges. Saws with worn handles. Measuring instruments precise enough for furniture making. This wasn't a hobby shop. This was a craftsman's sanctuary. And the pieces themselves told the real story. Scattered throughout the workshop and the studios were furniture pieces and wooden sculptures that would have impressed professional woodworkers. Hand-carved details. joinery that required real skill, finishes that showed patience and knowledge. Some pieces were simple and elegant. Others were complex, showing experiments with technique and design. Here's what made this discovery so shocking: many of these pieces were signed and dating back decades. Gene Hackman had been making furniture and woodwork art since the 1980s, maybe even earlier. While the world thought he was just acting in movies, he was actually spending his free time becoming a serious craftsman. The collection suggested thousands of hours of dedicated work. Not dabbling. Not something he did on weekends. This was a practice. A discipline. A passion that had consumed decades of his life. One piece in particular caught everyone's attention: a beautiful wooden desk, intricately carved, with dovetail joints that showed incredible precision. It was dated 1987, the year after he won the Academy Award for Unforgiven. While Hollywood was celebrating his Oscar, Gene Hackman was in his workshop in Santa Fe, hand-carving a desk. Real estate agents found wooden boxes, cutting boards, decorative panels, and architectural models, all handmade. All showing evolution and mastery over time. The early pieces were good. The later pieces were exceptional. This was someone who had committed to a craft the way most people commit to a career. The revelation spread through the art and architecture communities. Gene Hackman wasn't just an actor who retired. He was an artist who had chosen a different medium entirely. He'd traded the stage for the workshop. But the question everyone started asking was the same: why had he kept it all so secret? To understand why Gene Hackman kept his woodworking hidden, you have to understand something about him that most people never realized. He was an introvert in an extrovert's profession. Acting requires you to be seen. It requires you to perform. It requires you to accept that millions of strangers will watch you, judge you, critique you. For decades, Hackman did this brilliantly. He won awards. He earned respect. He became a legend. But something inside him was always searching for the opposite experience. In interviews from the 1980s and 1990s, Hackman started saying something that confused people. He talked about how much he loved being alone. How he valued privacy. How the constant attention of fame felt exhausting. At the time, people thought he was just being difficult. A typical actor complaining about the price of stardom. But he was telling the truth. Woodworking offered him something acting could never provide. Complete anonymity. When you're carving wood in a workshop with the door closed, nobody is watching. Nobody is judging. There's no audience. There's just you, the wood, and the problem you're trying to solve. It's pure creation without performance. For an introvert trapped in a celebrity's life, this was everything. The Santa Fe property wasn't just a home. It was a refuge. A place where Gene Hackman could be someone completely different from the person the world knew. He could wear old clothes. He could make mistakes. He could spend 6 months perfecting a single joint without anyone knowing or caring. He could fail privately and learn from it. Friends who visited the compound reported something remarkable. Hackman seemed genuinely happy in the workshop. More alive than he ever seemed on movie sets. He would spend hours talking about wood grain, about joinery techniques, about the philosophy of craftsmanship. He had found something that fed his soul in a way that acting never quite did. Before we continue, do you think you would have made the same choice? Would you walk away from fame and Oscars to work with your hands in private? Let me know in the comments. I'm genuinely curious what you think. The deeper truth was that Hackman had discovered something most successful people never find. He realized that the thing everyone wanted, fame, recognition, applause, wasn't actually what made him happy. What he really wanted was to disappear. The question that haunted everyone after the discovery was simple but profound. Why didn't Gene Hackman ever tell anyone about the woodworking? Why keep it secret for 30 years? The answer reveals something important about how he understood himself and his place in the world. Hackman was born in 1930 in San Bernardino, California. His childhood wasn't glamorous. His father was a newspaper advertising executive and a heavy drinker. His mother was a radio actress. He grew up seeing the entertainment industry up close, and he saw how it could damage people. How it could make you chase things that didn't matter. How it could make you lose yourself. When he became an actor, he did it seriously. He trained at Northwestern University. He studied the Stanislavski method. He approached acting like a craftsman approaches his trade, with discipline and respect for the work itself, not for the fame it might bring. He won Oscars not because he was chasing them, but because he was obsessed with the quality of his performances. But by the 1980s, something had shifted inside him. He'd proven himself as an actor. He didn't need to prove anything anymore. And he started realizing that the parts of his life that made him genuinely happy had nothing to do with acting. In interviews, he explained it differently. He said he didn't want to become a personality. He didn't want to be famous for being famous. He didn't want paparazzi following him to Santa Fe. He didn't want his personal life to become public content. He wanted to keep something sacred and private, just for himself. The woodworking was that sacred thing. If he had announced it publicly, it would have become a story. Gene Hackman's secret life as a craftsman. Magazine spreads. Documentary crews wanting to film him working. Galleries wanting to exhibit his pieces. His private sanctuary would have become another performance. Another thing consumed by the machinery of celebrity. So he kept it hidden. He told almost nobody. His family knew. A few close friends knew. But the wider world remained ignorant, and that was exactly how he wanted it. Many people watching have gone through moments where they felt trapped between who they were supposed to be and who they actually wanted to be. If you've ever faced that conflict, you're not alone. Hackman's choice to step away and build a secret life resonated with something deeply human. Yet the discovery of his workshop would force him to confront that secret in a way he never expected. When the real estate listing went public and details about the workshop emerged, something unexpected happened. Hollywood woke up. Entertainment journalists started digging. They reached out to people who had known Hackman over the decades. Interviews that had been forgotten were rediscovered. In a 1989 interview with the New York Times, Hackman had actually mentioned woodworking. He said he'd been taking classes and found it meditative. But almost nobody had paid attention. It was a throwaway comment in an article about his latest film. Nobody connected the dots. Then more pieces of the puzzle started fitting together. In the 1990s, Hackman had given an interview where he said he was spending most of his time on personal projects in Santa Fe. Again, people assumed he meant writing or painting. Nobody thought to ask what those projects actually were. He'd been hiding in plain sight the entire time. The architectural and design communities became fascinated. Experts examined photographs of his wooden pieces and were genuinely impressed by the craftsmanship. One furniture restorer said that the joinery and finish work showed the hand of someone who had invested thousands of hours mastering the craft. This wasn't dabbling. This was serious artistic work. If you're enjoying stories that reveal what really happened behind the headlines, make sure you subscribe because the next part of this story involves something most people have never heard about Gene Hackman's life. Stories like this one are what we focus on, the hidden truths that shape how we understand the people we thought we knew. The most surprising revelation came when people started connecting his artistic journey to his acting choices. In the 1990s, Hackman had become increasingly selective about roles. He turned down major film offers. He did occasional television work but nothing that required long commitments. He was essentially semi-retired from acting while still in his 60s. Critics at the time saw this as strange. Why would someone at the height of his fame step back? Now the answer was obvious. He wasn't stepping back because he was tired of acting. He was stepping back because he'd found something he loved more. He was prioritizing his woodworking. His real passion. His actual life's work. The most poignant detail emerged from people close to him. Hackman had kept a journal in his workshop. It wasn't published, but friends reported that he wrote reflections about the difference between performing a character and creating something physical with his hands. He wrote about how acting was about interpretation, bringing someone else's vision to life. But woodworking was about creation, making something that had never existed before and putting his own vision into it. For an artist like Hackman, that distinction mattered profoundly. The real shock wasn't just that he'd been a master craftsman all along. It was what his choice revealed about success itself. Gene Hackman's story forces us to confront something uncomfortable about how we measure success in modern life. We celebrate people who accumulate more awards, more money, more fame, more recognition. We build entire industries around the pursuit of visibility and status. But Hackman's life suggests a different kind of success. One that's measured not by applause or box office numbers, but by satisfaction. By fulfillment. By the quality of work you do when nobody is watching. He had achieved the pinnacle of his acting career. He won an Oscar. He worked with legendary directors. He was respected and admired. By every external measure, he had won the game. But he chose to walk away from that game entirely and play a different one. One with smaller stakes, smaller audiences, and infinitely more meaning to him personally. In his later interviews, Hackman talked about happiness in ways that most celebrities never do. He spoke about the satisfaction of solving a woodworking problem. The peace of spending a day in his workshop. The joy of creating something beautiful with his own hands. These weren't the words of someone who regretted leaving acting. They were the words of someone who had found something better. The discovery of his workshop in Santa Fe changed how people understood not just Gene Hackman, but the entire concept of achievement. Here was a man who could have spent his final decades chasing one more Oscar, one more starring role, one more moment in the spotlight. Instead, he chose anonymity and craftsmanship. He chose to be unknown. And somehow, that choice made him more interesting than any role he ever played. In 2024, Hackman is 94 years old. He rarely appears in public. He's largely removed himself from the entertainment industry entirely. But the legacy of his workshop, of his decades spent in quiet creation, continues to inspire people who learn about it. Artists, craftspeople, actors, and ordinary people who feel trapped by the demands of visibility have found something in his story that speaks to them. His life asks a profound question. What if success isn't about being seen? What if it's about being satisfied? What if the greatest achievement isn't winning applause, but building a life so fulfilling that you don't need applause anymore? Gene Hackman found the answer to that question in a workshop in Santa Fe, carving wood in the desert where nobody could see him. And in doing so, he created something far more valuable than any performance. He created a completely authentic life. But this story isn't the only mystery that remained hidden about Hollywood's greatest legends. The next story on this channel reveals something even more surprising about another actor whose real life was nothing like the image the world believed. If you want to discover what really happened behind closed doors, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. Thank you for watching. I hope this story reminded you that success looks different for everyone.